This is the story of how Raccoon gets his meat. Once upon a time, there was a raccoon. Not just any raccoon. This was Brerrabbit. And Brerrabbit had a best friend named Brerabbit. And Brerrabbit and Brerabbit were the best of fishing buddies. Brerrabbit caught the frogs, and Brerabbit caught the fish. And one day, Brerrabbit went down to the local river in hopes of catching some frogs. But on this particular day, the frogs were more wild than they ever were before. They were jumping left and right, up and down, weaving in and out, and Brerrabbit could not catch one of them. And this saddened Brerrabbit not because he couldn't eat the frogs, but because he could not bring any meat home for his family. You see, there was a mama Brerrabbit and a baby Brerrabbit. And when Brerrabbit baby was sad, Brerrabbit mama was mad. So the next day, Brerrabbit came back to the river in hopes of catching some more frogs, only to have the same result. This is when his friend Brerabbit hopped up to him, seeing he was disappointed, and asked him what was wrong. Brerrabbit looked up in disappointment and said to his friend Brerabbit, "I don't know what it is, Brerabbit, but I cannot catch one of them frogs. Can you please help me?" And Brerabbit responded, "Yes, I have a plan. I want you to find a sandbar in the river and lay on it." "Lay on it," said Brerrabbit. "What good is that going to do?" He says, "I don't want you just to lay on it. I want you to play dead." And at this, Brerrabbit was baffled. Play dead, he thought. How would that catch the frogs? And he says, "Don't utter a sound. Trust me." And so, while Brerrabbit was walking down to the river, the big leader bullfrog saw him coming and warned his little froggy friends to hide. And so they hopped up onto the bank and found a nook and cranny to peer out of. And when they saw Brerrabbit essentially croak, they didn't know what was wrong. They started to creep out of their holes and look at the corpse of the raccoon. That's when Brerabbit came and bowed his head in mourning the loss of his friend. And he turned around and said, "You know what I would do, right?" He says, "If I were you frogs, I would bury this raccoon so deep that he could never get out." And the frogs thought it was an amazing idea. And so the little froggies jumped on their little froggy legs, down to their little froggy huts, and gathered their little froggy shovels. And they came back with their shovels and said, "What do we do? How do we dig? Where do you want us to dig?" And he says, "Just dig right under him. He'll just sink right on in." So after an hour, the frogs were digging, using all their might, and they got tired, and they looked up out of the hole and said, "Brerabbit, is this deep enough?" And Brerabbit looked down and said, "Well, can you get out?" And the frogs looked around, and they chanted, "Yes, we can. Yes, we can." And so he says, and so Brerabbit responded, "You better keep digging." So after an hour or so, the frogs dug some more, and they were even more tired and more weary, and they looked up to the Brerabbit and said, "Is this deep enough?" And Brerabbit said once again, "Can you get out?" And the frogs looked around, and they chanted all at once again, "Yes, we can." And so he said, "Keep digging." And after another hour, the frogs were more tired than they had ever been in their whole entire life, and they just quit. And they looked up and said, "Is this deep enough?" And the rabbit said, for a third time, "Can you get out?" And the frogs looked around, and they said, "Well, no, we can't." So the frogs were stuck in there not knowing what to do with a dead body, and they had no plan whatsoever to get out. And Brerabbit sprung up and looked down and yelled to his friend Brerrabbit, "Brerrabbit, rise up from the dead and gather your meat." And Brerrabbit rose up from the dead, and the frogs couldn't believe it. How could this body come alive again? What phenomenon had just happened? And the frogs were going wild, jumping up and down, and Brerrabbit was grabbing him out of the air like it was his job, and Brerabbit threw a sack down in the hole. And Brerrabbit started stuffing the sack with his frogs. And after he stuck the last frog in his sack, he slung it over his shoulder, climbed out of the hole, thanked the wise sage of Brer Rabbit and went back home. And Brer Raccoon and his family had enough frog meat to last through the whole winter. And now that the baby raccoon was happy, Mama Bear was happy, or Mama Raccoon was happy, and this made Brer Raccoon happy. And that's how Brer Raccoon gets his meat.
Oh!